Hey Excel Geeks, this is Jack and I'm back to talk about OA Robot a little bit more. Let's go. Now if you don't know anything about OA Robot, go check out my recent videos. I've just posted an intro to OA Robot with Eric Ohm. Eric is the owner of Ohm Automation and the creator of OA Robot. I've been lucky enough to be invited into the beta testing group for OA Robot and I've absolutely been loving it, and I'm just keen to share as much as possible with the rest of you. Leading up to the Microsoft Excel World Championship, I will be releasing a whole series of OA Robot specific videos to help you have a go at OA Robot and see what it's all about. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the command collections that come with the standard release version of OA Robots. That's the free version that everyone should be able to have once OA Robot goes public. OA Robot isn't exactly a ready-built tool with everything that you need. You build your commands and you curate them into command collections. However, they are releasing 6 command collections to go with the standard release that comes for free once it's publicly available. So let's have a look. These are the 6 robot command collections that will be available in the standard release version. What we have here is a formula robot for general use with formulas, name robot which focuses on named ranges, array robot which focuses on dynamic arrays, lambda robots which focus obviously on lambdas, format robot which focuses on formatting, and text robot which is a more text-based functionality. I like robot sticker. There we go. Let's start with Formula Robot. Formula Robot has 5 different categories of commands. These are fill, formula, paste, table, and translate. I'm going to demonstrate 1 or 2 of my favorites in each of these categories. As a reminder, to get OA Robot to pop up, you can either select that from your taskbar, or you can press Ctrl-Shift-O and that should bring up the robot command window. So for the first demonstration, I'm going to be using Peter Charles Treasure Hunt level 1. This is a straight indirect function on the treasure map sheet of this particular cell to get the value in that one. And what I want to do is I've gone and calculated this. I just want to copy it down. So from Formula Robot in the fill category, I'm going to use auto fill down. Now, generally a fill down you can't use sitting out there in the middle of nowhere and you've got to go back and forth and find your cells. This will automatically copy everything down for you. As you can see, that gives us the correct answer. Next, in Formula Robot, I'm going to look at a couple of the formula commands that we can use, and here are a couple of my favorites. In this one, I have a lambda here, which I have created earlier. As you can see in the formula bar, it's a messy looking formula. So what you can do is very simply run format formulas. And this formula will automatically be structured in a beautiful, nice little way. If you wanted to take up a lot less space, instead of being nicely spaced out like that, there is an alternative opposite command, which is the compact formula command. This formula is now just put all in 2 rows. These 2 commands, compact formula and format formula, have been dubbed bow and unbow in honor of the Excel wizard Bo himself. The next Formula Robot function we're going to look at is remove outer function. So in this example, I am looking at this list of arrows and we want the 14th arrow in that list. So generally what we would do here is just do a mid that 14. Now I'm working with this function and I've gone and put a product function around this function for no apparent reason. I want to get rid of the latest function that I've put on there, so I'm going to just run remove outer function. Remove outer function. This is the second one in the formula category of Formula Robot, and as you can see, it has now gotten rid of the function that was there, and we're just left with the mid that we had previously. The next category in Formula Robot is the paste category. This has a variety of paste items for pasting in different ways. I'm going to do a simple example where I'm copying this range. I then want to go to another sheet to do some sort of lookup, but I don't want to be jumping back and forth, so I'm going to run a paste as references. This will then paste a link to my values in the previous workbook. I can then do lookups based on this and generate my output. For my final example from Formula Robot, I'm going to use one that I'm actually really excited about. This is in the table category. Again, we are looking at this table here from Census by Harry Watson. And I am looking at the problem to the right of this, where I would like to do a lookup on birth, life expectancy at birth for the city of Birdfield, life expectancy at 21 for the city of Colville, and so on. To speed up the process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run on the column city a generate table lookup lambdas command. What this will do is it will generate lambdas, which you can now see in the name manager, which does a lookup based on city for each column in the table. So in this case, what I can do for at birth, I can then look at cities. I can go equals cities dot life expectancy at birth years, and I can just put the city name in there. That gives me that in years. I believe in this example we're looking at months, which gives us 882 months. So a straightforward formula based on what we're looking up. Isn't that amazing? That saves so much time. Obviously in this example we're looking up different columns, but it makes it so much simpler to just then do equals cities average age at 21 years for Colville, and we're going to multiply that by 12. Answer straight away. Job done. The final category in Formula Robot is translate. I'm not going to demonstrate that here today because I am running an English version of Excel, and translate is a really amazing tool if you work in any other language apart from US English and there are discrepancies in how your Excel formula look compared to US English Excel formulas. These translate functions will then translate formulas from English to your local language or from your local language to English, so that you can then paste formulae up to LinkedIn or wherever you're sharing your formula. Under the name robot, we only really have the name category. This robot is designed around named ranges and any additional functionality around that. From this robot, I'm only going to show one example. Let's have a look here at the census case by Harry Watson. This case has a table of cities. I've gone and turned this into a table, but I want to be able to reference each column in this table a lot easier. So I'm just going to run name all table data columns. And when I run this, if you look at the name manager, we now have a selection of names based on the table name and the headers of the columns. This means I can reference individual headers in tables or in named ranges. This doesn't have to be strictly tables, and these are assigned new names based on the column headers. Welcome to Array Robot. Here we have 5 more categories: Lambda, Array, Volume 1, Wrap With, and Other, for different functions that you can use in Array Robot. Array Robot itself focuses on functionality around dynamic arrays. Let's have a look. The first section of Array Robot we're going to look at is the Lambda section. This has so many to choose from, but one that I thought would be really handy to show here would be the paste count unique values in array. This command takes an array of data and generates a unique list and returns a count to that unique list. Now, why would I want that? You might say, however, when you're looking at a bonus question, for example, in Census by Harry Watson, bonus question 2 is what state has the most cities? So I've gone to the city sheet. We have this table. I've set it up as a table now. And we're going to look at the state column because each row is a city. We're just going to press Control and then we're going to come to the right and we're going to paste this and do a paste count unique values in array. We're going to hit enter. This will then look at all the unique state names and give us a count of how many times each state appears. And as you can see there, XL state has 133 cities. The next largest state is Georgia with 12. The second function in Array Robot that I want to show you is under the array category. This function is just a quick one to save you a few steps in typing something out. In this example, I'm going to just take this number 19 and instead of typing equals sequence 19, I'm going to copy that number and I'm going to run the paste sequence down function. That will then generate a sequence of the numbers 1 to 19. There's a similar function, paste sequence to the right, which does the same thing but across columns. In the volume 1 section of Array Robot, there's one function that I think could be quite useful if you're used to playing around with Power Query and you like to kind of manipulate your data into different formats without having to go into Power Query itself. In this case, what we're doing is we're taking this array, which I have loaded from this collection in Deep Sea Diving by Nick Boberg, and I would like to unpivot this. So the command I'm going to use here is literally unpivot array. Control-Shift-O, unpivot array. There's your function. We run this, and now for each line that we had there, we now have 3 lines showing silver, ring, and necklace for each number. I love this one. This next function in Array Robot is in the wrap width section. The wrap width section is effectively wrapping up your current formula in another formula. The one that I'm looking at I particularly like because it allows you to do unique columns as well as unique rows. So now I'm looking at this array. I've made sure that I have a couple of duplicate columns in here that I don't really want in here, and I'm just going to run unique columns of array that will then reduce the size of this array to only those columns which are unique. Equally, you can do this for rows. All it is it's just wrapping it in a unique function. The great thing about the wrap with commands is that it allows you to slowly build your solution by adding a new formula around your entire thing without having to go to the start of the formula, type unique, go to the end of the formula, close brackets. It's instantaneous. The next command I'd like to show you from Array Robot is under the other category. We have something called paste lookup. Now obviously doing an X lookup every time, it can be quite tiresome to type out every single time. So I'm going to do a lookup on this arrow from these columns. So what I'm selecting is the first column that I want to do the lookup in, and the last column should be where the lookup's coming from. And then I'm going to just select paste lookup, and this should wrap this arrow with a lookup function to get the number in the column. Again, I'm going to do the same thing where I go look up this arrow, but now I'm looking at a wider view of the table because the first column is the lookup column and the last column is the return column. So in this case, we would expect everything to increase by 1. I'm going to do a Control-Shift-O to open that, and again, paste lookup was the last one I used, so it's there straight away, and I can just press enter. It will do the lookup around this function. The Lambda robot has 3 categories of commands: Lambda commands, LET commands, and then a handful of paste commands. So the Lambda robot is where it gets really interesting. The first function I'm going to look at is a generate Lambda statement. And what we're going to do is we're going back to Peter Charles treasure hunt level 2. We're given a cell in the treasure map, so this would be H7, which would be this cell over here, and then we're given an arrow direction. And it points down here, and we need to know what's in the cell in that direction. So in this case, it would be what's in I8. We're going to do that. So if you don't know how to create a lambda from scratch, but you know how to roughly solve this problem, you can start setting this up. So in this column, I've put a equals row in directive H7 equals column in directive H7 so that I know the starting row and column number. And then I'm going to do a little arrow lookup table that looks like this. We're going to do a row offset and a column offset. So as you can see, I've built this up bit by bit, getting the original row and column numbers, looking up the adjustments by row and column depending on what arrow you've got, and returning the new row and column. One tip here is to run the mark as input cells function on your input cells prior to running generate lambda. What that will do is it will determine these are input cells, everything else is a calculation until you get to the end function. Now to finish off a statement, I'm just doing it down here so that it's kind of in line with everything. I'll mark this cell as my target cell, and all I'm going to do in the end is I'm going to do an indirect function on treasure map I'm going to use an R1C1 format just so that I can easily put this in. Tag that as R1C1 style and go indirect. This gives me an answer of 139, and if we double check here, that 139 is what we're targeting. Now, obviously, I don't want to do this whole thing every time for every single row in this, so I'm going to generate this lambda function. When we run generate let statement, if we use the code GLSGL, it will give us a choice between generate lambda statement and generate let statement. In this case, we're going with generate lambda statement. And as you can see, there is a lambda parameter setup. It's determined that our two input cells are cell and direction from the headers above that, and it's assigned everything a different step name. So we can choose to rename these steps. You can choose to expand them. You can even choose to put some documentation in these if you want. In this case, we're just going to click OK. It's going to generate this entire lambda formula here. The second step that we're going to do here is I'm going to do a save lambda function. So we're going to go with this save lambda. And when we hit save lambda, here we start specifying we want to give this cell a name. So we want to find, we're going to call this one cell shift. And we're going to call the command get cell value after arrow shift. I'm going to hit save, and you can see in the formula now it just says equals cell shift G85 H85, which are our two input cells. This means we can start deleting these intermediate columns. I can just go into this cell, type in equals cell shift, close bracket, do a fill down, and there's my answer for level 2. The second category in Lambda Robot are the let functions. Now the let functions work much like the Lambda functions, but what we're doing is we are working with a let function where you can spell out what you've got. Now, I really am a big fan of let functions because I've always been pretty terrible at writing my own lambdas. I've only managed to do a few that I'm actually content with. However, let functions just let you insert whatever you want in there and spell out your solution. My favorite let functions here are cycle let steps and ordered formula steps. So let's have a look at those. What we have here is a let function that I've built to solve level 2 of deep sea diving by Nick Boberg. And one of the problems you have when you're trying to solve a case like this and you're working with a let function in high speed, something goes wrong, you don't know what's going wrong. This great feature called cycle let steps allows you to cycle through the steps that you're outputting. So at this point, I'm outputting the solution. My solution's correct, I'm okay with that. This will cycle through each of the steps that you currently have. You can see it has now switched to picking up whole. I will expand the formula bar. This is now picking up the whole row of the let function. If we run this command again, cycle let steps, it then switches to len whole, which tells me the length of the whole function. Again, we can keep going like this, running cycle let steps over and over, and it does each of the steps that we've done in this let function until you finally work out where your issue is, do a correction, and then produce the output. The second command I want to look at in the let section of the Lambda robot is the ordered formula steps. This works very much like cycle let steps, but if you don't want to sit there going through each individually to find where your issue is, we run ordered formula steps. This now generates each of the individual steps of your let function in a nice viewable format where you can dissect what is potentially going wrong. For the final command that we're looking at, this is in the paste category. I've chosen paste lambda statement. Looking at the let function that we created in the last step, if you copy this, you can go to a new cell, run paste lambda statement, and this will generate a lambda function based on your original statement. We now have that let function that we previously had saved as a lambda function. This works with any kind of function, not just let functions. That covers the command collections or robots that you're likely to get with the standard release of OA Robot. I hope that some of that has given you a bit of inspiration, a few ideas, and that you're keen to start digging in and try some yourself. Thanks for watching. Cheers.